Request to address the board. We'll start with Mr. Bonadies. Welcome.
Hello. I've got a little more follow-up to the Neola-Thrun bylaw changes mentioned at the February Board of Education meeting. There was no for your information presentation to the entire board prior to today's for-action vote to impose these regulations effective July 1st. So I will ask if the other board members not on the Administrative Services Subcommittee have had a chance to ask any questions on this massive legal defense system you are erecting. The superintendent may have presented it to others behind the scenes, which may indeed be legal, but I would not consider it lawful. I hope the superintendent, as I requested at the June 6th meeting, will do some sort of compare and contrast between these packages for the other board members as well as for the public. One specific issue I would like to see in the new bylaws, which may require an amendment since it's so late, is to clearly define the definition of a day. The current regulations seem to be flexible between calendar days and business days. My pet peeve in the is the agenda, which the bylaws state needs to be posted 24 hours before the meeting. I would hope that this would be Friday afternoon for the Monday meeting, but it is often Sunday afternoon. For the benefit of the public, I will state that regardless of the bylaw changes going into effect, it does not mitigate the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act or the Open Meetings Act. Lastly, any explanation of how this bylaw package improves the education of the children would be appreciated. The only comments on the record at this time are related to improving the legal defense of the board. Most of the public is not concerned with your legal defense. They want the kids educated in class without masks and not abused. Thank you.
Next up, I have Bill Domina.
Close enough.
How do you pronounce it?
Domina.
Domina.
I
Thank you.
apologize in advance for having to talk fast, but I think I'll make it under 5 seconds to go. Good evening. I wanted to talk about the Uvalde, Texas shooting and the issue of school shootings in general, and provide a few suggested actions for the board to consider that might proactively stop a similar incident before it happens in our schools. In Uvalde, the shooter brought the firearms legally and passed a standard background check. The National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, searches for any flags in a composite database maintained by the federal government, the FBI to be exact, that would cause the dealer to refuse sale and hopefully notify law enforcement to follow up. The problem is that unless the data needed to prohibit the sale had been entered, the sale would proceed. Getting relevant data into the NICS system is my focus tonight. A few facts from past school shootings. In the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting, the shooter's disqualifying mental health history was not provided to the NICS database, which allowed the guns used to be purchased legally. In the Uvalde shooting, the student's mental health issues were known to the school, students, and obvious in his social media postings. However, the NICS database contained no flags and the gun was purchased legally. In Parkland, the shooter was known to have extensive mental health behavioral issues by school administrators and the FBI. He legally purchased the gun because there were no mental health related flags in the NICS database. In fact, the FBI was sued and paid $127.5 million to the victims and attack survivors for not following up on 2 specific tips that could have prevented the shooting. The school district was also ordered to pay a $25 million judgment. A contributing factor may also have been the Promise program, the policy implemented by the Obama administration somewhere near the 2013 timeframe. The stated objective was to combat systemic racism in the public school system. From the Daily Wire, Broward County Public Schools had rewritten its disciplinary policies to make it nearly impossible to suspend, expel, or arrest students for behavioral problems, including criminal activity. Here are a few suggested items to consider. 1, establish objective and specifically defined mental health behavioral criteria that would initiate a specific investigation and evaluation process. If results warranted, to then initiate a legal process such that a judge could allow a disqualifying flag to be sent to the FBI for inclusion into the NICS database, such that a person would require a hearing before a judge in order to remove the flag. 2, develop a policy and step-by-step process for getting disqualifying data through the courts and into NICS. And third, do not accept grant money from any federal or state program, such as the Promise program, that incentivizes the ignoring of dangerous behavior and crimes, primarily misdemeanors, regardless of any social engineering objectives. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for joining us. Mr. Kawiecki.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Good evening. I tell you, I love Midland, and I have for many years. A lot of things going right here. We're lucky to live here. I think there is one item that I would like to address, I think, of concern. But I have to start with my father, because in my early 30s, he gave me a philosophy of life that has served me very well. 5 points, real quick. Number 1, you're a man. Number 2, you're a man, know your value system and where you stand on issues. Number 3, you're a man, do not compromise your value system. Number 4, you're a man, hold the line. And number 5, the most important, he said, son, one day you're going to have to account for your life here on earth. Keep that in mind. When you know you have to account for something, the chances of making a higher quality decision increase dramatically, which brings me to my point. K through 5, I think it's a concern, teaching gender identity and sexual orientation. Young, innocent American citizens with almost no life experience or limited life experience without parental involvement. Which brings me to a story of my son, 5th grade. He graduated out of the Midland system 33 years ago, but when he was in 5th grade, the Midland school system had a program at night. You had to sign up for the program. At night, you would go for sex orientation, and fathers would go with sons, and wives would go, or mothers would go with daughters. And now he's in 5th grade, and I immediately knew he didn't have a clue what was going on. How great for him. I barely knew what was going on. I'm in my 30s. I'm not opposed to having information in front of children, but why would you run a quality program with quality information as a teacher and not want parents to hear what you're talking about? I find that interesting. I have to tell you, I look back, I've been doing this since I've been coming to board meetings where I'm like, oh,
Ooh, Ian started.
am I done already?
Oh, no. It means you have all night.
I forgot.
Oh, good, I get an extra minute. I look back at Northeast and Midland High School, and I loved my experiences, but I have to tell you, I marked them down, not one teacher, counselor, administrator, coach, maintenance worker, or cafeteria worker ever asked me if I wanted to be a girl, or I thought about being a girl, or I wanted information on being a girl, or I wanted to go to a meeting on being a girl. And there's a reason for that. It wasn't any of their business. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense to me. Maybe it was a different time. Well, I have 2 references. Oh boy, thanks, Jeff. I have 2 references. Dr. Ben Carson, and I don't know if you know who Dr. Ben Carson is, but I like him. He's a neurosurgeon. He's got a spectacular resume, and I like him because he's calm, and his answers are well thought out. And on April 4th of 2022, this year, I watched him interviewed on grade schools and his opinion on gender identity and sex orientation, and here was his answer. There's a reason why we don't teach calculus and trigonometry to 3rd graders. They're not ready for it. I thought that was a simple, straightforward answer. The other one, and I don't know if you're familiar with her, but Corrie ten Boom. And she was born in 1892, and this book was written. I don't know if you know anything about this book. I've watched the documentary, I've watched the movie, I've read the book, and on page 42 of the 35th anniversary edition, she talked about her father. Her father was a watchmaker. And this is about, they hid Jewish people from the German occupation of their country. But she would go to, he was a watchmaker, and she would go to Amsterdam, and he would buy parts for his business. And on the way back one time, and she said I was 10 or 11 right after the turn of the century, which was the 1900s. So it's just been a long time ago. And I want to read what she said because I believe it's appropriate for today. And apparently from her writings, he was a spectacular man of character and integrity. And she said to him, "Father, what is sex sin? He turned and looked at me as he always did when answering a question, but to my surprise, he said nothing. At last, he stood up, lifted the traveling case from the rack over our heads, and set it on the floor. "Will you carry it off the train, Corey?" he said. I stood up and tugged at it. It was crammed with watches and spare parts he had purchased that morning. "It's too heavy," I said. "Yes," he said, "and it would be a pretty poor father who would ask his little girl to carry such a load. It's the same way, Corey, with knowledge. Some knowledge is too heavy for children. When you are older and stronger, you can bear it. For now, you must trust me to carry it for you." And her answer was, "I was satisfied, more than satisfied, wonderfully at peace. There were answers to this and all of my hard questions. For now, I was content to leave them to my Father." Thank you.
All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody that spoke. That was everyone I had on my list.
Mr. Domina, would you mind emailing your presentation to us? Because I usually take notes, and that was beyond my note-taking ability. That was a lot of information.
I'd be glad to. I'll just get some emails or the email you prefer to be sent after the meeting.
Thank you.